Hi, I'm Villain Theory and welcome to today's video where I am making a tier list, or to be more accurate, I've already made it and I'm going to show you guys. This tier list is a tier list with a difference. It's a tier list where I have already ranked every character in 9 different categories. As you can see, we're here with Spider-Man. In each category, each hero will have 1 to 5 stars, and some exceptional ones might even have a 6th extra star in purple. If I think they really push the category in some major way. So yeah, tier lists tend to take a long time. Hopefully, visually, a lot of why I rate heroes a certain way will be visible. So I won't talk every part of every hero through. Just the bits I think are most meaningful. This is also the day before next evolution releases, which is the expansion which introduces player side schemes. So this is really why I wanted to do this today, because I think player side schemes could have a really major impact on the game. I think certain heroes will really benefit from them. So I wanted to sort of take a snapshot of what I think are, heroes' power levels at the moment, and see how many, if any, really change in comparison to one another going forwards. So yeah, let's jump into it. I'm going to quickly go through all the different categories and what they mean. But I know you guys just want to see the rankings, so we'll be pretty quick. Damage, pretty obvious. Damage to the minions, ways to clear minions, or how you win the game by beating the villain. Threat removal, makes those nasty yellow counters go away. Survivability, I've sort of rolled all the defensive sort of things into one. Starting hit points, defense, tough cards, healing cards. And damage I could have split into burst damage and steady damage. I think in a similar way, I could have done that here with these different parts. Starting hit points is your short-term survivability, but high defense is long-term. But it all kind of, does feed back into itself. It isn't too far gone. So I think it's worth keeping them together. Economy is kind of how much you can do on your turn. How many cards can you pay for? So it's resource generation or drawing cards that, each count as a resource at least, and anything like that. Control, stopping the villain doing what they want, does have some overlap with survivability in terms of stuns and activation cancels, but it's a little bit more meaningful. If I stop the villain attacking outright, there's no boost effect. Magneto, for example, doesn't get magnetic counters, generally just giving the villain a bad time. Reliability is kind of, how consistent is your character, both turn to turn and across a whole game. Do you need to draw this one specific card to do well? Do you need to draw the right card to do anything? Or, how often can you do the right thing? Also, combo heavy characters will suffer here because, if you need to draw the right card before you can use, another card, that's going to bring your, consistency down. And also how bad your obligation and shadow of the past is all a factor here. Readiness is sort of, the opposite of how long does it take you to set up. The readiness is how quick you are either, near to full power or, a very reasonable power level. So if your character is all built, based around building up upgrades, you're going to score low here. And if your character is ready to go, hits the ground running, then they're going to score very high. Card value, I think is somewhat obvious. Not all cards are created equal. There are a lot of extreme examples here. The way I'm going to rank it is if your hero has a value of 1 star in card value, it basically means I would rather see an aspect, card than one of your hero cards overall. If you have 2 stars in card value, it means your hero cards are probably on level with aspect cards, but at a 3 or above, they are, basically where they should be. Hero cards are meant to be better than aspect cards. That is a basic design principle. So when that is not true, it is quite significant. Then we have ease of play. I think this is the last category. If your character is easier to play, you're going to get better results more often as you are making less mistakes. The rankings are primarily for expert mode, but your mileage will vary. The easier villains on expert are still easier than the harder villains on standard, and different characters are better against different villains. But I normally play on expert mode, and I like to put in harder modulars or go toward the higher end. Not Ronin, not Ronin or Venom Goblin too often, although I do fight them. But I don't hate myself. And yeah, these rankings are for any player count, so you could be playing solo or 4 player. I've kind of taken what I think is kind of the average from all player counts and put them together. Most heroes don't move. some do, and a couple move like quite significantly. So I'll cover those when we get to them. Um, Most heroes could also move around a lot within their tier. So some of them are like very neck and neck, and different situations they are better in than others. It's very hard for me to rank them. I have ranked them numerically as well as on a tier list. But yeah, just if your favorite is quite low, I can see the arguments for putting them higher already. Trust me, you have no idea how much I've moved everything around. Um, and yeah, we're just gonna go for it. If your hero is low, I don't hate them. I wish I could put them higher, but someone has to go low. However, the first hero was very easy to place. No hot takes here. Valkyrie is Valkyrie. In multiplayer, you know, she can be a really good minion clearer, but I think she really needs Dragon Fang to do that. So you're just looking for this one card to basically double your attack stat. Until then, pretty bleak, and she is still one-dimensional. Awful Shadow of the Past. Just very, very painful to play as, I'm afraid. Next is Hulk, and some similar issues. Threat removal low, reliability low. Economy not great. These guys, they can do things, and in multiplayer where their weaknesses are kind of covered, falling namely, they can do quite well. But Hawkeye actually like in 2-player the most, with maybe a Justice player, because I don't think he can play enough cards to reliably defeat multiple minions, which is what I like, in my more aggressive characters in multiplayer. Um, you can play him in different aspects. You can do different things with him, but I don't think he does more than the other heroes. Even though his 18 hit points do give him some, niche situations where actually he would survive when no other characters would. I think that's relevant, but not too relevant. So this is the H tier. It's my joint smallest tier. And I mean, I don't think anyone is too surprised by this. One-dimensional characters, they only really do one thing, attack, and they don't really have the money to do it as well as most other characters anyway. Very awkward turns, very inconsistent. Also, Hulk's Shadow of the Past is not good for him either, or his obligation. Up next, we have Drax, and this one hurts me. I love Drax, but he has damage, but he has to build for it. He has survivability, but if he cashes in on his healing, he has to build up again, get his vengeance counters again. I think you can have really good Drax games if you can just, build up your counters without anything too bad happening and then win. But on the other hand, you can have very bad Drax games and he just kind of loses. I kind of think like Hulk, I like him in 2-player. I think that's quite a sweet spot if someone's covering for his weakness. Whereas in, 3 and 4-player, although he'll hit the big damage, it's not, bursty enough, I would say, to, outright defeat the villain. So then you just have this sort of one-dimensional character on the side who he's doing a lot of damage. It's what you want, but doesn't bring what other characters bring. Next up, we have Groot, who shares quite a lot of this. Threat removal I almost put as 2, but the thing is, it's so dependent on having growth counters. They are brittle. The wrong treachery card and extra attack, all these things can just take them away, and that's what he struggles with. He's a one-fort character who needs to go alter ego to get his resource to enable all his hero cards. People underrate his upgrades. I actually think those are great. I usually try and play most of those. Depending on the aspect, priorities might change. But yeah, just a tension between I need to go alter ego to power up, but I don't have the means. It's very difficult, and it's quite a tense, it's a difficult line to walk. Justice makes it easier. If you struggle with Groot, play him in Justice. Honestly, in any play account. Bring Overwatch in multiplayer. But yeah, I like Groot. Very difficult. Problematic. War Machine, super, super fun. He brings tons of damage, not much else. And he does need to go alter ego to get his counters, just like Groot. Oh, look, he's got a thwarting stat of 1 as well. Neither of them have any confuses, anything like that. So it's pretty rough in that regard. But I do like him. He's very fun. Again, in multiplayer, when the fort is covered, if War Machine is sort of in the minion control role, I think he's very good. But it doesn't bring a lot to a team, and I think other people can do it just as well, if not better, and bring more. So it's kind of rough for our guy here. She-Hulk is one I'm struggling to rank. So since the rules reference 1.5 update dropped, you can now do interesting combos with her damage. If the target is stunned and you have your plus attack upgrade, you don't lose it after you attack now because there's no valid target to trigger its effect. I don't know how to pronounce his name still. Megai. He's got a really cool deck called Rules Lawyer up on Marvel's CDB, which basically uses this. However, when I've been playing around with this kind of thing, I just haven't found it consistent enough to like get that upgrade, get the stuns, keep them consistently out to really boost her up the tier list compared to before. Let me know if you've tried it, if I'm wrong, what you think. But for me, she's still pretty low on the list overall, though she is very, very fun, very unique. Gamma Slam, split personality, very cool cards. Hawkeye is up next. Now, his arrows are really good, but you can only really play one a turn unless you exhaust your hero, which means you miss out on free attack, which is awful. So I suggest never exhaust Hawkeye for your bow outside of emergencies, where you genuinely have nothing else to do or you desperately need the card, the arrow's effect. Low threat removal, low defense. He wants allies to block for him, in all honesty, or stuns. You know, he's pretty desperate for them. But he can do well. I do like explosive shot and piercing, vibranium arrow. Sorry, in multiplayer, there's just good targets to make those cards get really good value. But yeah, he just struggles. Now his kit's very self-contained and not any more powerful than a lot of aspect cards in that regard. Thor is character who can be extremely powerful if you draw minions at the right time. He's rich. If you draw side schemes at the wrong time, he's stuck. He is really good at damage. He can be really rich, really good against minion heavy scenarios, but elsewhere he falls off. But I do like him, and I can't find much else good to say. There's probably something. You know, he has some cool stuff. I do like playing Thor, but yeah, he ends up rounding out this tier here. So yeah, this is the D tier. So the last one was H for Hawk and Friends. This is tier D for Dude, where's my forting? Or the Drax tier. I still feel bad about this. I don't like him being there, but I've been back and forth on this so much. I don't know who to swap down there instead of Drax, in all honesty, from, an all player counts tier list perspective. Mostly like the other characters on H tier, they're kind of inconsistent, pretty one dimensional, don't have a lot of money to go around. It's, they're close to greatness, but if one of them is on a team, if it's not a situation, a villain that's particularly good for them, I am going to kind of mentally prepare myself. Okay, I'm going to have to do more of the heavy lifting, sadly. But I will happily say the next tier and onwards, every character I think is really good. Embrace yourself for this next one. This is another Drax situation. I don't want to put them here. I am so sorry. We have Black Widow. It feels wrong to put Black Widow here, but I've been back and forth. I cannot figure out who else I would put here. Amazing control hero. Problem is, if you play grappling hook and then you get a side scheme or a minion, you've wasted all this money on trying to stop an encounter card, except you haven't. And though she's very good at stopping things happening, she's not very good at dealing with things that have happened. That is her downfall. Now, aspect cards can make up for most of that, but then you're not really leaning into more of what she can do. I do think she is good, though. I don't think, I would, whenever anyone plays her, I would expect good results, but she can have awkward turns and things can line up wrong. I can play Widow's Bite, then not see a minion for 3 turns. Multiplayer, that's less of a factor. I think Widow's Bite is one of the ones that can trigger when it's other people's thing happening, whereas grappling hook is only the treachery you draw. But also it matters what form you're in. So all of her preparation cards she has are hero form only, and she wants to go alter ego. So there's a few things fighting there and a few little inconsistencies that just brought her down for me. Rapid Response is a preparation, one of the best cards in the game. Everyone can kind of run a good recursion deck, so it didn't elevate her enough for me, although I really wanted it to. Nebula, I don't think people will be surprised to see here. I love Nebula, I think she's really fun, but she's kind of firing blind. You're playing these techniques that will trigger kind of, normally on the next turn or the turn after. You don't know what's going to be there at that point, so I can see that, why people get a little bit frustrated. You kind of have to plan ahead. In solo, wide stance can let you do that. But again, you're not going to see that every turn. And, honestly, once you're at 3 and 4 player, wide stance is awful. I don't even like it that much at 2 player. Yeah, she struggles a bit there. But I do really like her. Next up, we have Wasp. And Wasp is really, good all-rounder. Good stats. Events can do everything you need, and she has a lot of them. The events are kind of expensive, both for what they do and just generally 2 to 3 costs for a lot. And she doesn't really have any money. Tim Particles can draw a card, but I don't think it really offsets what she has to deal with. But the Genius, Ingenuity, and Moon Girl cards have really helped her. Professor X is a mentor resource, which she likes for her genius ability in Alter Ego. So she has some stuff that lifts her up. I just don't think she's been lifted up quite enough for me to leapfrog anyone else. Although, I think she's a lot better than she used to. I used to consider her, you know, bottom 10. Now, even though she is near the end of the extended, list of heroes we have now, I consider her more in the top, she's in the top 33 and not the 33rd worst, if that makes sense. She's very good, I think, these days, overall. Quicksilver's a painful placement, absolutely insane late game potential, but very unreliable and very low readiness. So you really need his upgrades to get anything much going, and you don't really have card draw to help you find them in any really meaningful way. Now, your alter ego ability is good. I do think you should use it a lot, especially honestly at any time. But if you're not using this turn 1 and you don't have that upgrade you want, probably made a mistake. Depends on the situation. But yeah, Quicksilver's just very slow to get going and unreliable in actually setting up the things he wants, first. Um, so fast hero, slow to actually get slow acceleration, high top speed. We'll put it that way. Colossus has some absolutely amazing cards, amazing damage, borderline, undefeatable, a bit like Groot. I didn't point that out, but Groot had the extra start and survivability. But things can go wrong for Colossus. Most people when they first play Colossus, I think will end up, short of tough cards. They'll be like, I can't do anything. I can't use any of my cards. The key, I think, with Colossus is to go alter ego basically every turn, if not more. Because you get the bigger hand size and you get a tough card. Most people, I think, value a tough card around 2 resources. Every card generates a resource. So basically, by going alter ego, you've basically gained 4 resources, which is your whole hero hand size. So, compared to staying in hero form, I think you've really doubled what you're working with, and you've made sure you've consistently enabled your events to work. In solo, that's tricky to do because he has no threat removal card. So like justice and leadership there. Multiplayer, you can be more flexible. I actually like aggression for him there. Star-Lord, again, I think he's very difficult. I think Colossus has a lot of decision points that change things up. I think Star-Lord has as well. He's super, super risky. So if you make the wrong decisions, the riskiness can go out of control. If you make the right decisions, the riskiness, the lack of reliability here, it can be mitigated a lot. But the main benefits of him are he comes out swinging. You can generally find any damage you need pretty quick. Most of the time I would recommend playing the element gun you find to start with. And then he's got his what could go wrong hero interrupt ability. I think this is the downfall of a lot of people who play him, that they will just use it all the time. I will have games where I use it almost every turn. Then I'll have games where I use it for 1 or 2 turns. So it varies a lot. My best advice is I tend to use it turn 1 when I've got more health and main scheme to play with. Get the element gun into play, get things started off. You play upgrades on turn 1, you're getting that value every turn. And yeah, also when the game is nearly over, because here's the thing. I'll just use a solo example for ease, but it kind of works for multiplayer to some extent still. If you're pushing to win the game either quickly or you're near the end, you can kind of see the finishing line, use your ability. If it's an attack and you lose the game, the card game, it is random. It is unfortunate though. But most of the time, it'll be like maybe a minion, a side scheme, or an attachment, something that you can ignore for 1 or 2 turns, and that's fine. So you use your interrupt ability to get those extra, free resources effectively, discount something, and push toward winning. Then you ignore whatever the consequences of the encounter card it draws you. Then next turn, you do it again, and hopefully you win. So you haven't had to deal with that last encounter card because you didn't even get to the point to flip it, and you've ignored the previous one. Now, again, that encounter card could be something that really messes up your plan. Maybe you do have to deal with it. But a lot of the time it won't be. So you can kind of, jump ahead. You can kind of get these extra 6 resources of value, but not have to deal with the consequences when you're closing out the game. That is what makes him, especially such a good rush hero. And you can just, get that extra value near the end to cross the finishing line, and that's all that really matters. This tier list is more about winning. It's not about winning with a super clean board. It's not like the league a lot of people like to play. Yeah, I really like Star-Lord. A lot of interesting decks you can do with him. Definitely got some big weaknesses though, along with some big strengths. Phoenix is up next. If she started Unleashed, but with the 3/4, things would be different here. But unfortunately, most of her cards, while you are restrained, are very weak. Her Nemesis set is devastating. A lot of people will say, "Oh, it's never caused me to lose." Um, you're just not losing anywhere then, because there's very few encounter cards that maybe under fire, drawing you Shadow of the Past and something else that are as bad as Shadow of the Past is for Phoenix. It's like a 12 hit point Nemesis minion. It's been a few weeks, but I think it's tough. The side scheme ends the game. It takes so many resources to deal with. If you're in any kind of high pressure situation, it's significantly difficult, in my opinion. And if you're not, if you can just say, "Oh, well, that's nothing, I deal with it," you know, you're definitely winning regardless. You probably could have, brought a much weaker deck, or take an extra couple of encounter cards while you're at it, because it is bad. Um, yeah, I've tried pushing Phoenix, up against Ronan and different villains kind of in that league, and every time Shadow of the Past comes out, it almost inevitably led to a loss. Not every time, but like it just would flip the tables. Things would be so difficult that it would just push me over the edge. Whereas on other heroes, Shadow of the Past does not do that. Next up, we have Ghost Spider. I should probably say for Phoenix, Mutant and Psionic, really powerful. Ally builds, I really think, lift her up with Cerebro. Yeah, next we have Ghost Spider, who it hurts to put here, putting a Web Warrior here. But I think she lacks some consistency where she relies on the responses and interrupts. If you don't find them, you can't do as much. If you do find them, are they the right ones for the situation? She's incentivized to play cards at the wrong time just to get the ready up. And you kind of have to weigh up whether that's worth it. And if it's not, you're just missing out on the bonus you could have got if you'd got the right cards. She's kind of reactive, whereas it's better to be active. I don't quite know how to phrase this, but yeah, it's better to not rely so much on that kind of thing. But she's very good. I think in good games with her, she'll feel like a top 10 character. But I do think you can very easily have bad games, especially in solo, in multiplayer. Probably rank her up slightly higher. But I do like Ghost Spider, very fun, made protection fun. Black Panther is up next. I almost gave him the 6th star in purple for economy. The Golden City, 2 card draw every turn. Such a good alter ego support. 3 copies of Vibranium. Really, really good stuff. Yeah, he's good. He's easy as well, I would say. He has some sequencing. You have to do his upgrades in the right order, but they're generally pretty straightforward to do. Smaller hits to pop toughs, bigger hits to defeat things. If there's nothing like that, just make sure the last thing you do is the thing that's giving you the most value in that given situation. I really like him. The cards I found hard to value. The upgrade does nothing until you play Wakanda Forever. Wakanda does nothing until you play an upgrade. Normally, the events do stuff on a hero anyway, and so do the upgrades. And if one enhances the other, great. So, his cards will start off a little bit on the weaker side, I would say. You have to earn the value over time, and he starts, having to pay the tax of getting those upgrades in. But I do really like Black Panther. So this brings us to the end of this tier. This tier, I honestly think you could reorder these characters completely. Previous tier, D tier, I do think Thor is probably at the higher end. I do think Groot is toward the lower end. But here, I honestly, you could put Black Panther in Black Widow's place, Black Widow in Black Panther's place. I wouldn't argue with you. I went back and forth so much with this tier. But yeah, I call them perfectly imperfect. The reason these ones are here rather than one up is I just think they have some kind of downside that just brings them down. That doesn't, just stops them otherwise being as good, but their strengths are very high and they can win games very well. Always happy to see these at the table in multiplayer as well. Up next, we have Adam Warlock, and it hurts me to put him this low. I think he's underrated. There's a very famous deck for Adam Warlock called Wild Tutor, and I have a lot of respect for the creator, Brian V. I think it's a very creative deck. But I see a lot of people say Adam wasn't any good until they played Wild Tutor, and they swear Wild Tutor is the best deck for him, I'm going to have to softly disagree. I think Wild Tutor is the tip of the iceberg. I think it's the popular deck that plays him correctly, but I don't think it's got the best kind of balance of cards. So you do want to focus, you want to discard fairly heavily. You don't want to focus too much on trying to ready up with his cape, anything like that. However, his specific deck building requirement, his Avatar of Life, one card only of each type, and then, equal amount from different aspects. The thing is best for our allies. Allies are, there's no debate, I don't think. They are the best type of card in the game. They are extraordinarily versatile. They all attack, fall, and block. You can only take one of each anyway. So for Adam, this doesn't even matter. Now he can just take the best allies from every aspect. I think that is the first, biggest thing he can do in his strength that you really want to do. If you've played Cyclops, who we'll get to, just getting the best X-Men allies is very powerful. So imagine what this does for Adam. You can even get the best allies from, let's say, the X-Men or, Guardians from every aspect, and then do sort of tribal builds with more ally choices. You will be restricted on some of the other cards, the support cards you only have one of. Extremely good. And, if you do want to choose a card, Make the Call, I think, is the best card for it. Now you have all the best allies from every aspect, and you can just grab one again. So yeah, big fan of Adam. I think he's really good. Encourage people to play Wild Tutor if they haven't already, but I do think that is the tip of the iceberg and you should explore other builds with him. Rocket Raccoon, I think, is really cool. I like the Guardians. Thematically, Guardians of the Galaxy, one of my favorite movies. I've actually started reading the comics, but I hated Rocket originally. But things have changed. He's got, more confuses in other aspects. He's got genius stuff, and what's good about the genius stuff, Moongoat and Ingenuity, are their basic cards. Most of the Guardian stuff are basic cards. I think Rocket benefits from the power in All of Us resource card more than most heroes. I would absolutely put this in his deck. Now, too many resource cards can be a problem. He comes with Salvage, I think it's called. But he has a lot of card draw to find targets for it. I also love Repurpose with him. So yeah, Rocket has surprised me. I used to rate him really low, or like at best around the middle, and he's now around the middle, but the middle has gone up a lot, and I think Rocket does really well. I could argue for him being higher, and part of me wishes I had put him higher, but yeah, Hone Technique, even Overwatch helped him a lot. He's got a lot of really good tools now. Gambit, I think, is a character that's better in solo, and because this is a general tier list, he's fallen down a couple. So in solo play, I think he definitely moves up. I think his reliability is a bit of a problem. He can't really do damage without events. It is very possible not to find them at the right times. Again, his threat removal is dependent on being alter ego, and then your FIFA Extraordinaire finding boost icons. FIFA Extraordinaire is still good if the villain is confused or stunned. You can kind of pick your encounter card. It's very strong in terms of control. His confuses are good as well. He has quite a lot of resources. I do think his resources are generally overstated. I think you can build in ways to cycle them back in, but he does not inherently have that, and he does not always have the right cards to spend them on, I would say, compared to certain heroes with more card draw that they can combine with resource cards in general. But yeah, very cool character, very fun. I really like Gambit. Spider-Man, Peter Parker, the original. What a weird character to be the tutorial character. Where's his damage? Where's the threat removal? You might be thinking, swinging web kick. Oh, he's got all that damage. It hits the villain hard. What if the minion has 4 hit points? You could attack for 2 this turn and next turn, but aren't you using his 3 basic defense? Definitely think, the middle range minions and even some of the lower range ones, honestly, a bit of a problem for Spider-Man. It doesn't help that his threat removal is among the worst, Colossus doesn't have a threat removal card. Hulk is barely worth playing unless you're in like a real emergency. Spider-Man is you can barely play in solo. So you have to attach it to a minion. You get a side scheme as your encounter card. Where's the minion? It's delayed. You have to have one type of card to put the Spider Tracer attachment onto. Then you have to defeat it, and then have the threat removal, take place. It's very inconsistent. Better in multiplayer. Still slightly awkward, but fine. Um, but it's not much, especially with his one forwarding. But thankfully, he is basically invincible. Not quite, but he's really good. Aunt May can almost fully heal him from one flip down, and he's got that free defense and backflip, and tons of money. When he's attacked, he draws a card. Hugely good. Uh, Miss Marvel is up next. I've included 2 stars in damage in red and 3 in threat removal in yellow. Green. I know colors in yellow, kind of orange really, but so the yellow is for justice and the red is for aggression. I think her hero kit kind of enhances aspect cards. I can't give her a high score in threat removal unless she's in justice with, you know, holding cards that hit multiple schemes. But if she is and she uses shrink and now she's doubled up, the extra threat removal, I think that's huge. And doing stuff like that with, multitasking, Overwatch, problem solvers makes her like one of the best threat removers in the game. So that is one of the reasons she is up here. But she has lots of fun combos, a little bit rules heavy, very unusual playstyle. Some people I've heard say, "Oh, I don't play her Persona support cards. I don't think they're good." I think they're amazing. I think that's one of her best parts. She has one of the best alter egos in the game with them. Yeah, just very unusual playstyle, knowing when to use her ability, on what card to use it on. Wriggle Room is the answer. Going alter ego when she doesn't come with confuses. And then using her persona supports, which do take a bit of thinking about. Since she can put cards on the bottom of her deck, you can build up combos down there. Bruno takes, a lot of thinking. You can set up some really nice combos with him. And you can even use the, I think she's Nakia. She basically puts a -1 discount out on the next card you play. And you can use that in alter ego, then flip down to hero and use it, which I don't think a lot of people do. So a lot of cool stuff with Miss Marvel. Nova's up next. I think he just has like pretty good output. Like his threat removal is pretty nice. It's pretty good threat removal events. The cost doesn't matter because he always has wilds to generate double toward them. But what he has is economy. His helmet is basically 2 Quinn carriers minimum in a turn. Because he'll ready it up when he uses a basic power. It generates a wild resource. That's 2 wild resources a turn, guaranteed to get it on turn 1. It'll either cost him 1 or 2 resources. Let's say worst case, you spent 2 resources on 2 Quinn carriers. That's a good deal. Now you're incredibly strong for the rest of the game. It doesn't have a lot else to scale up. You kind of have to build that in if that's what you want. But he hits the ground running. If you're playing, or someone is playing a character who takes a while to build up, who has low readiness, bring Nova to cover the early game because he hits the ground running or flying. Rogue. I think people will be surprised to see Rogue this high, but I really like Rogue. Excellent all-rounder, I would say. She doesn't really lose to damage much, in my opinion. I think she's very sturdy. Good damage, good threat removal. I think her events are underrated. They are sometimes a bit pricey. I think what you need to build into her is economy. If people see all this trait stuff she can do, and they build in all these unreliable combos. Oh, I need this card in before this card works, this kind of thing. She doesn't need that. That is fun, but if you're talking about power, you don't do that, and she is very good. And even if you build into one trait, I still think she does exceptionally well. I've had very good luck with Web Warriors, Guardians. She's just good. She is just really good. Better than I think people say. I think she's one of the more difficult heroes in the game. Because superpower adaptation basically means your entire discard pile is also part of your hand. You can just grab them with that. For situations you wouldn't, but a lot of situations you would and should. And yeah, with multiple players, multiple discard piles, tracking them all very difficult for the best possible play. A lot of people don't like that. You have to put touched on the villain for Bulletproof Bell, and that's like her most valuable card. I will say though, with all the stuns and confuses she brings, that a lot of the time, Bulletproof Bell's not even going to do anything anyway. Like, you're going to get it at the wrong time. You can hold it, and a lot of the time you should hold it, but I wouldn't be too precious about it, or you'll just get frustrated with awkward times, which she doesn't have to have. If you remove Bulletproof Bell, I still think she'd be an extremely good hero. It would be a big blow, but she'd still be probably in this tier, honestly. Up next, we have Iron Man. In solo, this guy goes down a tier. In multiplayer, he goes up 1, maybe even 2 tiers. I think Iron Man is these days underrated. I think he's really strong. And if you can manage to set up against maybe a more generous main scheme in solo play, really well, he is phenomenal there. I think his late game output is just so good. And there's a lot of tech now or card draw to really make him set up fast. It hasn't been unusual for me to enter turn one with a hand size of 4 in hero form. I do normally stay flipped down rather than go to hero form to get that hand size because, I want to set up even more faster. But I can do it. It does happen, relatively often, not all the time, but if you mulligan hard, if you use Futurist, you're going to find tech pretty consistently. So yeah, I really like Iron Man. That brings us to the end of that tier. Again, I think you could reorder this tier mostly, although I do think Iron Man is so good he stays near the top. But everyone else, I can see arguments for them moving around. Probably wouldn't move Rocket too far past the middle. Yeah, really solid characters all around. Always have a really good chance of winning if I see them in play. Multiple strengths. These are, we've gone all the way away from these one-dimensional, D tier characters. Sorry, guys. Up to characters that always bring multiple things to any given team. Even if Spider-Man is in, say, aggression, he's defending a lot. Maybe he backflips for himself, basic defense for someone else. Miss Marvel, even if you're going for a big justice build, maybe you play him big and then get some, solid damage off, take out a minion here or there. Really easy to, lean out of your specialization and cover for people. That's really useful. Up next, we're going to have Ant-Man, who I almost put one down. I do think he's good, but I do think without his helmet, he feels normal. And with his helmet, he feels extremely strong. It's interesting how big of a difference that makes, but it's just a very good card. His helmet is so essential. If he could have a more reliable way to get that helmet, maybe play a side scheme, I would have to revisit him. But he is still such a solid hero. Huge damage. Giant Stomp is swinging web kick with extra. Then he's got 3 attack stat, pings of damage when he changes to giant. Army of Ants dealing really nice damage every turn. What's nice about Army of Ants is you can just ping the exact damage you need to set everything else up. Pop Tufts, easy, no problem. Threat removal, kind of terrible. In solo, it's fine. He's got 2/4 on tiny form and pings one when he changes. But let's go up to 4 player and he's trying to control the threat. What he's really bringing then is 1 4 card that needs setup. You don't have Army of Ants out. Hive Mind is not good. Otherwise, completely solid, very difficult to defeat, tons of self-healing, lots of HP, really good character, very fun. I love playing Ant-Man. Vision is up next. I think people will be surprised to see him here too. He is a character I consider as being, boring. I'm sorry, guys. He's just boring. he's like completely unflashy. There is nothing flashy about him, and I think that's why people underrate him. How do you lose the damage with him? He's got 11 hit points. He can get 5 recovery, right out of the gate pretty much. But mainly, when you're in intangible form, you take 2 less damage from every attack. So while that is good against villain attacks, if you're overrun by minions, you just stay in that form. You don't have to particularly build to want to be in that form. If that's just the situation you find yourself in, you just sit in that form for a couple of turns. And maybe even until the end of the game if they're, not bothering you that much, if you can close the game out soon, because they will basically be doing no damage. I think the ability for builds that don't really want to do that in the bad situation is really strong. He also has extremely good threat removal. He has a couple of good threat removal cards that bypass Crisis, but also his Solar Beam card can be damage or threat removal. So he has a lot of threat removal cards in his deck, I think like 5, and he has 2/4 basically, which is a lot more than most characters have. Most will have 2 to 3 threat removal cards. He's got 5. And then he's got Vivian. So the flashiest thing he has is Vivian, one of the better signature allies in the game, along with the Rogue is a signature ally, Black Cat, and there's a few more characters we haven't got to. Probably some on others I've forgotten already. But yeah, Vivian, she's really good at a base level, but since Hickory Branch Lane recurs her, so much value all the time. Really bring that damage you need, even if he doesn't have like flashy damage turn to turn otherwise. Speaking of turn to turn damage, Gamora's really good. Now, she is quite draw dependent. Marvel as well. These are kind of what I consider event heavy characters. You want to add events into to add consistency. But what she does have does a lot of damage and a lot of threat removal. And she does it all really good, really well from turn 1. Don't have a lot more to say about her. her ultra, not, her deck building, bonus. Her abilities include different cards from different aspects. Could be really strong. In multiplayer, I think we now have so much aspect synergy, you might even not want to do that. At least if you're in, aggression, you might want to focus on attacks. Justice, there's some really good threat removal to be had, but it's still useful. And in solo, extremely good. Yeah, Gamora, very, very good hero. Wolverine, I mean, speaks for himself. He's got that purple star there in damage for a reason. Some say he's the best he is at what he does. And I think he's pretty nice at it as well. Uh, if you decide to stop attacking so much through his claws, he can then get a lot of healing for free and has healing cards. You can be flexible with that. You can go Alter Ego, boom, 6 recovery. There's an opportunity cost that you don't get the healing factor at the start of the next turn, but it's just very safe, very solid. I do think some of his events aren't quite as good as other events of his. Lunging strike stands out far and above his other attacks, although they are useful for consistency. But those claws are just, Wolverine's claws are everything. The claws combined with his hero ability really boost this guy up. Trading hit points for a resource for an attack card, which is effectively what it does. Excellent trade. Spectrum, I think, is excellent, and I think this will surprise people. A lot of people do think she's good. A lot of people do think she's bad. Why is she good? Because everything is amazing, basically. She has a lot of money, 2 solid resource generators. Also when she changes form, she gets to draw a card, which just lets, change more, do more, while getting a card draw on the go. Her cards are fairly affordable. They have the superpowered trait. Very good character in terms of bringing damage, threat removal, and she doesn't really lose the damage. I think the people, the problem people struggle with is that she can get stuck in the wrong form. She is dependent on her events to change form. So I think building into her basic stats is a trap. I remember when Tony Tales first reviewed her, he said, she was an event hero. He thought she was the evolution of like Gamora, who was the evolution of Miss Marvel, and I agree with that. I don't think you want to add events to her quite as much as you do to the other ones. I do think she's a little bit different. But yeah, since you can't be sure what form you're in, unless you choose not to play her events, but they are very good and you do want to change form, as they are better when they make you change form, in my opinion, most of the time. So yeah, rather than not play her events, I think you should just not build into her basic stats. Take whatever form she's in as a bonus, and then lean on her events. Build in allies, which, if you're in thwarting form, they can damage for you. If you're in damage form, they can thwart for you, and so on. Bring that reliable versatility that she doesn't have, and then just use the excellent value she does have around that. I think she does so well. I think every time I play her, she surprises me with how good she is. Shadowcat is up next, and Shadowcat is really good. It hurt me to put her down here. But the thing is, I think this, bit like Iron Man, is much better in multiplayer. I think she's much better in solo. Kind of like Gambit as well in that regard. I think, although, yes, you could build her to defend multiple times on any given turn, you can do that with a lot of heroes that are good at defending. And I don't think they'll generally take much damage when they do it anyway. So I think, her phased ability, once you run out of efficient ways to call yourself the defender, I don't think, I think pushing it to defend multiple times isn't going to give you that good value you're really looking for. Still will be good, and, the more pressure she takes off the team by defending, covering for them, the more they are available to do. But defending, I don't think, is too difficult to find. Status cards, allies, there are pretty efficient ways to find it. It takes a lot to bring defense up to that level, and yeah, I think in solo, she definitely gets there, and it's incredible, borderline immortal sometimes. But multiplayer, I don't think it's quite as impactful, and I think what all the other characters above her, and honestly a couple of ones below her, bring, that they can help deal with bad situations more. She has really good efficiency, but she doesn't have, tons of output, and she can't bring it on demand. If Airwalk is in her discard pile, that's her threat removal kind of gone. She's got her 2 forwarding, you probably defended, right? So she brings decent damage, but she's not gonna help, dig a team out unless you've, thought into aggression or justice, which I actually think are underrated aspects for her. I think they're very strong. But, there's a lot of stiff competition above her. So in solo, she probably jumps up like, I don't know, 5, 6 ranks, I would say. In multiplayer, I think I would rather have other heroes a lot of the time. although she is still very, very good. Um, Bit of an unusual opinion there, I think, but it is one I have come to believe in. Next up, we have my playgroup. We call her Special Doctor as of the abbreviation. Penny Parker, SPDR, Spider. It offends me that there's two forward slashes for an I. I don't understand it. Uh, Not my favorite hero, but a very good hero, and I love how unique she is. And she is very good. You can see the numbers here. So building her up is a factor. Some people try to say, "Oh, it's so quick; it's just free. You're just turn one." That's not how it works. It does take a couple of turns. If you're unlucky, maybe something gets discarded by Court of Guard, it can be agony, and that is a serious weakness. But if you can survive just like maybe 4 or 5 turns, very hard to lose with her. Uh, she kind of is, Venom's multi-gun. She's what multi-gun is to Venom, but as a hero, in my opinion. Once everything is on the board, she can just deal with anything, whoever she needs, with tons of options. I think what makes her difficult is that she's unusual, but I think once you're used to her, I think it's kind of almost like a flow chart. The efficiency of different cards. Oh, if there's enough threat, I will use her threat removal interface. Um, it's and if there isn't, I would just won't use it. There is more nuance to it, um, but yeah, she's a very very powerful character once set up. Very cool. Speaking of powerful characters when set up, there is Ironheart. I think a lot of people might put Penny Parker, Spider above Ironheart. I wouldn't, just because I think Ironheart's a lot more consistent. Maybe doesn't reach as high as a peaks, but I think her worst kind of games don't go as badly as Penny Parker's worst games. I think what's really cool is most of her hero kit gives her progress counters. She also starts with the ability to get one from her alter ego. So, it's quite consistent to build up. And I think once she's built up, she is unstoppable. Starts off with that free defense, so she's always pretty formidable. But the threat removal kind of goes off the charts. Get those toughs going. Progress counters can just end, any villain at any player count, honestly. Really valuable. Wanted to put her higher, struggled to, justify putting her over others, but I could see it. She could definitely break into the top 10. So this is how things look. I will say, I think, while you could move them around in this tier, I do think Gamora, Vision, and Ant-Man are kind of more at the right-hand side. I do think Ironheart, Penny Parker, and Shadowcat more at the left-hand side. They're all very, very good characters. And that brings us up to our top 10. So first in our top 10 is Scarlet Witch. People have said to me, don't use Hexbolt, it's too risky. Oh, I told my friend not to use Hexbolt. Unreliable. I mean, it's not reliable to do the exact thing you want, but it's extraordinarily reliable at getting good value. And with your crest, with Chaos Control, you are going to get something good from it. Guaranteed. And status cards from it are just phenomenal. If you can get 2 from it, which isn't that rare, extremely good. Chaos Magic is maybe a best card, but there's only one of them. Just play Hexbolt whenever you see it is all I can say. And if that one Hexbolt leads to another, keep playing them. Extremely good hero. And the unreliability of their output is somewhat offset by multiplayer. A little bit like Spectrum. You might not know exactly what she's going to be able to do every turn, but it'll be valuable, and there'll be more places to put it there, and people to cover for the things it doesn't do. Up next, we have Captain America, who is just Mr. Versatile. Turn 1, he can attack for 4, thwart for 4, and he's probably got, his shield in place, so he's all ready to defend if there's going to be any damage pressure coming. Just really solid all-around character. Allies are strong, he can play with a cheaper at the start. Not the best alter ego ability, but still pretty good. Yeah, you just don't have bad games with Captain America. That's why his reliability has the purple star. No one has a Captain America game and says, I lost because of luck. He's just good. And I think that is his biggest strength. He's also, got that versatility I mentioned. Any kind of build just works so well on Cap. Speaking of captains, we have Captain Marvel, who a lot of her cards are worse than Captain America's, but she draws so many more cards than him that you'll get the value that way. Originally, I used to think of Captain America as one of the very strongest heroes, and Captain Marvel kind of toward the lower end of top 10, and I guess that is where she technically is. But there's a lot more heroes in the top, new heroes in the top 10. What's good for Captain Marvel? I tend to call her card draw the character, which is also resource generation the character in some ways. But you'll just see so many cards with her, and as we get more and more aspect cards, they don't necessarily become more strong, although some do. But we get more versatility, more flexible cards, more cards that combo better together. That all works so well for her. She'll see more of them. If there are combos, she'll be able to put them together by getting through more of her deck to find them. She's just extremely rich, and that makes her very powerful. She hits the ground running, and she's very hard to defeat with that healing for recovery. And in a pinch, she does have a defense card. Her signature ally also worth a mention. Probably a few of them that I haven't mentioned now, but yeah, very good. Storm, I think, is going to surprise people here. I think I probably do just sneak her into the top 10 in single player, solo. I think in multiplayer, Thunderstorm is a force to be reckoned with. +1 attack across the board is nothing comes close, in my opinion. I mean, she's not the top rated hero, but just turn 1, being able to give everyone +1, phenomenal. You and your allies and your other players, as well, and their allies, you will always attack more than the villain attacks you. Ideally, you don't end in that form if you, that weather support if you can help it. But if you do, you probably would have got way more value than the villain will ever get from it. So I do think it's an excellent trade. But yeah, having those 4 weather support cards is amazing. Something I do for her, I actually do this for Spectrum as well. Where Spectrum has her energy forms face down. I like to just keep them all face up, and to designate which one is active, I'll put a counter on it. It's almost meant to keep her deck, stacked, but the thing is, you're allowed to know what's in the deck, so I normally set them out, and I just use a counter to designate which one is the active one. I think that makes decision making a lot easier, honestly, for both characters, but especially Storm, where the effects are a bit more involved and there's more of them. But yeah, really strong character, really good cards, really good. Next up is Spider-Woman. And I don't know if you see all these stars here, but she's kind of good. Isn't really a bad card in her hero kit. Even the worst one is still good value. Then, pheromones is a thing that exists. But also her deck building, special bonus thing, her double agent, 2 aspects. So many combos become available, and you can just take the best from 2 and have really good results. I don't think there's any kind of combination that is bad. Aggression and protection, justice and leadership, leadership and protection, justice and leadership. Any kind of way you want to do it, it's always she's still in the top 10 regardless of which aspects you choose for her, I think. So you do have to build carefully. I do think, her superhuman agility ability is a little bit sometimes difficult for people to plan around, definitely newer players, but also hurts her reliability because you can just draw a lot of hero cards or all cards of the same aspect. That does happen. If you're relying on her stats, and you can have bad turns, but for the most part, extraordinary. Could easily put her higher. Top 6 is, the whole top 10 is very formidable, but this top 6 is, very strong. And then we have Cyclops, which this will surprise some people, but the ability to take any X-Men from other aspects is so strong. And he's also so consistent. I've got him here with this extra start and reliability. Allies are super versatile. He can have some of the best allies from different aspects. That's already good. But here's the thing. If you need damage, all you need to do is find a tactic upgrade. You might want to play anyway, but you can play it, and you can Optic Blast. Can't find one, or your Tactical Brilliance can go and grab one. And then he's got his damage cards on top of that, so he brings tons of damage. Thing is, his threat removal cards are very efficient. There are 3 of them. He has 2 forwarding, and he has all these really good allies. So his forwarding is really good. I could have put both of those stats at 5. I just don't think, he has burst options of any kind, and, they're not that exceptional unless you're trying to lean into it, but if you do, they are super good. Yeah, just the power of allies enhanced by Cyclops, and a bit like Storm's Thunderstorm giving +1 attack. His tactic upgrades, very powerful when you've got multiple players. Really cool character. Next up is Spider-Man Miles Morales, and I could put him up, but I think against Steady and Star Wars, that stops him from. I think the other characters above him are less reliant on stuns and confuse, whereas he can do well without them. But I don't think he's top 3 material. But top 4, maybe. Web Warrior, super good trait. Champion, pretty good. Miles Morales himself, extraordinary. Uh, this is, I think, the first time I've put a 6 star in the card value. His cards just do so much for very little cost. Uh, and that is the majority of the reason of why he's so good. But what they do is bring control. Stuns, confuse, maybe I don't sort of consider this exactly control, but toughs, really, really good. The villain basically can't harm you unless things go really wrong. Um, and that is one of the reasons why I say Venom is actually better. So we have Venom, who I used to put neck and neck with Captain America. And that's how high I put Captain America. Uh, but the thing is, we have a lot of new characters afterwards, and a lot of characters that rely on card draw or card combinations with new options that have moved up over Cap. Uh, but I just maybe coming to realize, Venom is very strong. You know, I do think turn one, Captain America has the advantage, and I do think that is important in a lot of situations. Um, the things you can do, multi-gun is one of the best cards in the game. Everything is just good. His alter ego support is just good. He can shut down, 2 attacks with one of his defense cards. He can do anything he kind of needs. I've heard him described before as having the solution to any problem. Um, you don't have to build it in. He's just good to go. And I think that's kind of true. Any kind of build, a bit like Captain America, he can make it work. Maybe readying a little bit less, but still kind of good. CITP is an option for him with that Guardian trait. Very, very powerful character. Yeah, very, very good. And that brings us to the end of this tier. This is what I've called the S tier. Now, in play, I've called it nearly guaranteed to win. Kind of think that's true in all honesty. Not against the hardest scenarios, hardest difficulties. If you go into heroic mode, you put in, standard 2, expert 2. Absolutely not. But, as far as expert mode is concerned, these characters should be winning the vast majority of the time. Even winning, extremely good win rates against, the hardest villains, if built right, if piloted, very well. I think these characters are just phenomenal. I think let's say, Storm might suffer against Ronan. Ronan's strength is lots of attacks. Against Venom Goblin, I think she absolutely, stands in this company. Maybe, better than some of the others here. She just has so much output, and it's what she brings to the team as well. You know, but all of these characters should just really do well against all of these villains. Maybe Cyclops has a bit of a harder time against Collector One, who somehow puts his tactics, steals his tactics from his brain, puts them in the collection because they are upgrades that leave play, which is kind of funny. But I still think he's good enough that he kind of destroys that, even if it's a worse matchup. Yeah, one of these characters is on the team. I can kind of know that I can sit back. Me and my partner play a lot of 2-player, and if she's playing one of these, I'll be like, hey, now I can play a D tier character without feeling bad at all. I can even play, Hulk, and we're probably still going to do just fine here. Very, very good characters. So no prizes for guessing who comes next. So we have Spider-Ham. I think people like to hate on this hero, because he got in instead of, X other Spider character, or Daredevil. But he is really fun. If you've not played him recently, the little sort of mini game where you want to try and take as little damage as possible while still taking damage, super engaging, really kind of unique. It's a little bit like Drax, but it's a lot easier, we'll put it that way, especially with the tools that Spider-Ham has. Boarding is amazing, Ham It Up is incredible on top of everything else. He's got some great upgrades for that as well. Survivability is off the charts. Cartoon physics can just stop, any kind of attack right there, and you still get the counter. Big HP, nice recovery, strong character. But economy, maybe I should have put a second purple star in this, make him up to 7. He doesn't have the card draw of Captain Marvel, although maybe Web Warrior does. He has more resources than anyone else by a landslide. And what's particularly powerful, and kind of one of the reasons why he gets to, it wouldn't be half as good if he didn't do this, but what he can do with these resources is he can bank them. He doesn't have to use those resources immediately. So anything you don't spend on this turn, you have for the next turn, and you can do some absolutely colossal turns with him. Super powerful. Damage is a bit of a weakness. So you have like your hammer upgrade. I don't think, if he gets swarmed by minions, he's not going to have a great time. Starts with that one attack. But I feel like everything else more than covers for it. And last but not least, we have Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange has topped every tier list, I think, since he's come out. And I'm going to say, you know, it's probably going to upset someone. If he's not at the top of your tier list, you either have forgotten because you haven't played him that long, forgotten how good he is, or you're being controversial for the sake of it. Doctor Strange is broken. Even with the Cosmo nerf, he is broken. He's fundamentally broken, every level. Um, the cost of his invocation cards is too low for absolutely incredible effects. Now, he does want some setup, but he has tons of card draw and ways to get through his deck. I think if he's overwhelmed, a little bit like Spider-Ham, he can lack a bit for damage, but I do think his card draw, which is more than Spider-Ham's, just helps give him more answers for that. So I could have arguably scored the damage down, another star, but the fact is he can just put out so much damage on the villain. So I think it's justified. Um, very strong hero. And that about does it for our tier list. This is the entire thing. Again, S plus, one at characters, like a little bit tongue in cheek. But again, rarely lose with either character. Very strong. And yeah, what do you guys think? Do you disagree with me? If so, why? I'd be really interested if you guys, were to look at the ways I've rated these in the different categories and why you thought they were better or worse in a certain category, or why that category it matters, more or less. Why do you think a character is different? But yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed this. Hopefully it's been, insightful. And, you can move a lot of these characters around or even up and down a tier to some degree. I think hopefully, what I intended was that by rating them in these categories, it would be really useful so you could see what was good in what way. And, it's both to, in terms of, playing them, what to look out for, what to maybe try and mitigate at deck building, but also how to pair characters up in multiplayer. Um, Low readiness, take some with high readiness. Low forwarding, take some with high forwarding. Some of those are obvious, some of those not so much. So yeah, I've enjoyed this. Hopefully you have, and hopefully I'll see you for the next video, and enjoy next evolution. Bye.